How's it going, everyone? My name's Patrick. I'm a 26-year-old car enthusiast. I've been licensed for about 11 years, give or take. And of those 11 years, I spent about half of that time in European cars of varying degrees. And I have collectively spent over 100,000 miles in these vehicles. And so, kind of wanted to just talk about my learnings, my findings, and my experience owning and driving these cars for over 100,000 miles. So let's get started. Bit of background: my first car was a 1996 Honda Accord. I owned this for about a year, and so really solid first vehicle. But I'd say, as a car enthusiast, just couldn't really scratch that itch. And so I did what any dumb 16-year-old kid would do, which is I went out and bought a 2000 BMW 328i with a 5-speed manual. Uh, Now, this was a really fun car, but it was a piece of shit. And so this was kind of like my first foray into the European car scene. Really nice, as you can see, had the ZHP front bumper, um, naturally aspirated inline six. Problem was this car was a salvage title, and check engine light was always on. It was misfiring, so just couldn't pass smog. So really fun car. Learned how to drive stick on this car, but sadly only kept this car for a couple months because it was a piece of shit. So by the time I sold this car off, I don't think I lost any money. I think I sold it for right around the same price that I bought it for. So after my experience with Beamers, I kind of went back to my roots. Got myself a little bucket Honda Civic. This was a 5-speed manual Honda Civic, and kind of this is kind of the first car that I really started to modify. So, I was like changing little shit like the shift knobs, and also lowered this shit on eBay coilovers, which I think were like $200-300. So drove like shit, rode like shit. Interior was falling apart. Headliner was just cut up. So drove this around for a couple months, and eventually offloaded this. Actually traded with someone to get this pretty clean 2000 Honda Accord DX, also a 5-speed manual. Drove this around for close to 2 years. This thing was a tank. It had about 300,000 miles on this when I picked it up, and when I sold it 2 years later, I think it was sitting at like 335. So my second German vehicle was a 2014 Volkswagen GTI, the Wolfsburg edition, with flannel seats and the golf ball shifter. So 6-speed manual. Bought this in 2018 for 15 grand. It was one owner. Had about 39,000 miles. So real solid car. I think this car did everything well. Perfect daily driver. And as you can see, I was well underway with modifying things. Just this is where I really started to get familiarized with how to maintain and keep cars running smoothly. So as you can see, I did the spark plugs, did like some Audi R8 coils, and then I forget what this is called, but it helps with the idling somehow. So really, really fun car. The only problem was for pretty much the entire time that I owned it, which was give or take 2 years, put about 25,000 miles on this. Check engine light was always on for some reason. And so I don't know, it could have been the Audi R8 coils that I had put on there. Who knows, right? But yeah, as you can see, took it on some canyon drives with some buddies. Really, really fun car, and I'd say overall solid build quality. So during COVID, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I traded the GTI in for my dream car at the time, which was a 2013 Subaru BRZ Limited. So this car was really fun. Something that I had been wanting since I was 16 years old. So couldn't pass up the opportunity to purchase this car. So I traded in the GTI for about 10 grand, and then the Subaru BRZ I bought for 15 at a Mercedes dealership. So really, really good deal. I think, this being the beginning of COVID, they were kind of eager to offload these cars. And so yeah, as you can see, 29,000 miles, real nice inside. Yeah, super, super fun car. Ended up getting rid of this because 2021 we had some yeah let's see, taking this, so beginning 2021 used car prices were through the roof, and so I owned this car for about 18 months ish, give or take. 29,000 miles. Sold it to Carvana with 46,000 miles. And so, mind you, this was COVID, right? Everyone was working from home. So all those miles that I put on there were strictly canyon driving, strictly non-commuting miles. And so I feel like I had my fun driving this car. I mean, really, really sweet car. Yeah, as you can see, it was a blast to own, for sure. Took it out on some canyon drives again with my cousins, with some friends. Really had my fun with this one. So shortly after the BRZ, I went ahead and got a, let's see here, let's play this. There you go, see? Ripping up the canyons in the BRZ, as you should be. So shortly after this BRZ, I went ahead, drove around in an old Honda Civic. I figured, okay, I want to go back to my Honda roots and start modifying things again. But then I realized, this car's a piece of shit. So, I mean, doesn't matter how much money you put into a Honda Civic, right? It's still somewhat of a shit box at the end of the day. No offense to anyone driving Honda Civics. They're great platforms. Yeah, some nighttime canyon driving. I don't recommend driving with one hand on the wheel and phone on the other. But here we are. So this was the Civic that I had owned. Didn't own it for too long. So shortly after the Civic, I went out and bought a 2003 BMW Z4 2.5i. This car was a sweet car. Really solid build quality, really fun to drive, especially for the age. I mean, it handled amazingly, and I think it was even up to par with the Subaru BRZ. I felt the Z4 was it felt better, quite frankly. So yeah, as you can see, taking care of some mods. So DISA valve, was pretty worn out, so went ahead and replaced that. Spark plugs and coils as well as a new cooling system, just to kind of make things reliable. And so here's the thing with these German vehicles, you pretty much have to maintain them proactively. So you can't just replace things as they break. You should replace things before they break. And so I was really paranoid about things leaving me stranded, and so I took the proactive approach and was really maintaining things before things could go wrong. Oh man, the thing was sweet. Yeah, so bought this car for $5,900. It had 113,000 miles in 2021. And so I sold it at the beginning of 2022 for $6,500. Because I had gotten a 328i M Sport, and so I kind of went in purchasing the Z4 with the understanding that it wouldn't be a forever car, it being a two-seater, and eventually I found a 328i M Sport with a manual transmission, which I still currently have. So yeah, here's me and my fiance's uncle replacing the cooling system. We did the water pump, thermostat, serpentine belts, new coolant expansion tank. Yeah, just new radiator. Just kind of getting it up to speed as far as reliability is concerned. I mean, spend a lot of time on the road, so never want it to be left stranded. And this light right here is the brake sensor light. Yeah, so like I said, man, this is definitely a car that I regret getting rid of. You know, it was a sweet car. It handled beautifully. You know, really refined inside, real comfortable. So at the time, I just didn't have the space to own two cars, so kind of had to offload it. Man, this thing was sweet. So moving on, kept that for 10,000 miles, 8 months. And then at the beginning of 2022, I bought a 2015 BMW 328i with the manual transmission. So again, really sweet car. And I think, you know, with all these German vehicles, you have to really be proactive with the maintenance. And so here, as soon as I picked it up, bought this for 25 grand at the beginning of 2022. And it had about 58,000 miles on it. And now it has 115,000 miles. So with all these cars, they've never left me stranded. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that I'm just super tedious and anal about maintaining them. And so with this car, man, I've pretty much replaced the water pump, thermostat. This has an aluminum intercooler, aluminum radiator, aluminum coolant hose flanges. Let's see, replace the spark plugs and coils. I've done the entire fluid flush, so manual transmission fluid, rear differential fluid, of course oil every 5,000 miles. This also has aftermarket Bilstein B14 coilovers, so handles really well. Yeah, can't complain. So still have this car. You know, this car definitely wasn't really wasn't on my radar when I was first searching, but also think, you know, it happened to come up during my search. I was just looking for a 4-door manual transmission car that was comfortable, refined, and sporty enough. This happened to fit the bill. It was pretty expensive. So it leads me to my last car, which is a 2012 Range Rover HSE. This car, unfortunately, was rear-ended a couple of weeks ago, so they had to total the car. But I'd say the ownership experience with a Land Rover product was actually really good. So I think most people, you know, you read all the horror stories online about, you know, these cars will leave you stranded. They'll spend more time in the shop than on the road. And while that may be true for some people, it wasn't my experience. So owned this car for about 10 months, and in those 10 months I put 10,000 miles, which is, it wasn't that much, quite frankly, but you know, this was the day I got it. I was getting a pre-purchase inspection, clean bill of health, and yeah, this car I really missed because, you know, it was super smooth, super refined. Air suspension was amazing to drive. Felt like you were on clouds. You know, naturally aspirated V8, Jaguar V8. You know, really reliable and smooth in my experience. So with this car, I bought for $10,000 in October 2024, and unfortunately, it was, like I said, totaled a few weeks back. So, insurance company paid me 15 grand, and in total, I put about 7K into it during my ownership. Mostly for preventative maintenance, right? I mean, I did the entire cooling system, so these cars have a known pretty weak failure point with the cooling system. The coolant crossover pipe in the front and rear tend to leak and just straight up explode, which is to be expected because it's a plastic pipe. that's coming into contact with extreme heat. So got that replaced with full metal pipes. Did the water pump thermostat, new battery, and yeah, this car was a dream to drive. These cars have a known issue with the timing chain tensioner guides, but as long as you keep up with the oil change intervals and you keep an ear out for the rattling of the timing chain, then you're good to go there. Yeah, you won't experience any issues really. Man, this car was a blast. So this was a one-owner vehicle, and so yeah, I got really lucky with finding a Range Rover like this. Sadly, it was rear-ended again. Rear-ended a few weeks back, and was totaled, deemed a total loss strictly because of the. Here's the footage of it getting rear-ended. Fuck. Deemed a. So this was the other vehicle that hit the Range Rover. So this was deemed a total loss because this other vehicle hit me going 40 miles an hour. Didn't stop at all. And so there was rear floorboard damage, kind of connecting to the frame. And so sadly, yeah, deemed a total loss because the repairs would have been quite pricey, and these cars aren't worth much. So I'd say my experience owning German cars for give or take 5+ years, over 100,000 miles, has been actually pretty awesome. I think the feeling of driving European vehicles just can't be beat. They just have a certain it factor. You sit in one and it just feels special. And I think, while there are cars from other manufacturers that can achieve the same feeling, I think with German cars, they just feel much more refined and sporty, and they just feel special. They feel like less of an appliance compared to other car manufacturers. I'd also say with European vehicles, they kind of have that perfect blend of refinement, sportiness, comfort, and you just have that bit of edge, right? That brand cachet that you really don't get with other vehicles. Yes, at the end of the day, maintenance costs are much higher when compared to Japanese vehicles, but ultimately, I think most people would be surprised at the costs, because really they're not that far off, especially if you're doing a lot of the work yourself, or if you have a reliable, good, independent shop. Then really you're not spending an arm and a leg for these vehicles. And so I would say, when it comes to these vehicles, you have to pay to play. So maintain them well, drive them often, right? These cars don't like to sit; they like to be ran and be driven, right? I also think the benefit of owning and driving European vehicles, at least buying them in the used market, is they're really attainable cars. At the end of the day, people are really scared to own German vehicles for some reason. There are so many horror stories online of someone's neighbor's friend's brother's cousin, how their BMW, their Land Rover, left them stranded at the side of the road. I'd say with these cars, they depreciate so quickly that they can be really attainable. And the cost to maintain, as you can see, isn't all that much. And I'd say, everything that you hear on the internet, you should take with a grain of salt, right? Even my experience, how, these cars have been great to me, but ultimately I'm a car enthusiast. I research these things. I love maintaining my cars and working on them. So my experience may not be the same as someone else's, right? And I think when it comes to these vehicles, yes, the maintenance is higher, the DIY is much more difficult sometimes, and more frustrating, quite frankly, but ultimately, as a car enthusiast, I feel that the trade-off is worth it. And so thanks for hearing me yap, thanks for hearing me ramble, and yeah, go European cars.